Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. And I'm delighted to have Angus Hurst here from SSO Logistics, who's going to be giving this webinar. But first of all, as you know, we have to read out our usual disclaimer, which basically says the following presentation, gone too far, is produced for general guidance only, and professional advice should always be sought before any transaction is undertaken. Individual circumstances can vary, and therefore no responsibility can be accepted by Harts Limited or any of their affiliates for any action taken or a decision made to refrain from action by attendees of this presentation. Reads like the terms and conditions on some game show, but anyway, it's one of those things we have to do, I'm afraid. A quick general update as to where we are now, and we're still in form filling season, so that's P11Ds and Form 42. So P11Ds, if you've had any benefits in kind, those need reporting in the next couple of weeks. Likewise, Form 42 as well. The Bank of England is meeting today to probably put up the interest rates. That's what everybody seems to be saying. So just keep an eye out for that. That'll probably happen about lunchtime today. And self-assessment return season is beginning to draw upon us. So if you need your self-assessment return doing, then please get in touch. We're already starting to plough our way through the nearly 1,000 or so that we do over here at Harts. A couple of other things as well. Don't forget we have our free ebooks which are on our website. One is on planning for your business, and it's actually shown as taking a fresh look at your business. You can just pop in your email address and download that ebook for free. It's all about looking at where you want to go and where you are now and how you're going to get there. And then feel free to have a download of that, have a read, and if you want to get in touch and have a plan, please feel free to get in touch. And we also have one on management accounts as well. So if you're wondering what management accounts are all about and you think they're just a new thing, well, you may well be enlightened by the fact that they've been around for an awful long time. And there's a free ebook on that as well. The next free ebook coming out fairly soon is on thinking of selling your business, and that will be out in the next couple of months. And that will also be available as a free download from our website, so watch out for that. So other resources, please follow us on LinkedIn. We're trying to get our followers up to 1,000, and if you can help us get there, that would be great. So please follow us on LinkedIn. There's lots of useful information which goes up on there. Subscribe to us on YouTube Limited. On YouTube. And if you search for Harts Limited, you'll see all of our webinars, videos, and so on that are on there. And you can catch up on anything that you might have missed, and this session will appear on our YouTube channel later on today. And follow us on Twitter at HartsAccountants. And yes, we're also on Spotify. We have some podcasts on Spotify. Feel free to log on, search for Harts, and you'll get some interesting information there as well. We are planning to record a few more, so watch out for those. Feel free to follow us. The next webinars and events. We have one next week on the 29th of June. We're doing this jointly with Hammock, and we're looking at software for landlords, and this is specifically designed for landlords of domestic property. Whether you own 1 or 100, this software is for you. It not only helps looking after all your own information like tenancy agreements and valuations and even EPC ratings of your property, it also helps us because it produces all the information that we need as well. So if you want to know more information about that, please join us on the 29th of June. You can follow the link on our website and you'll be able to log on to that, go to the events page. Webinars, this is the last webinar before we break for the summer, but we will be back in September. We're going to be looking at pensions, we're going to be looking at about selling your business, and we have Lloyds Bank also giving us a presentation. Those are the 3 that we have booked in so far. There's going to be plenty more. And if you want to have any other topic or you want to present a particular topic, then please feel free to get in touch. If you think we've missed something or you want us to put on something more specific, we will do so. So just get in touch, drop me a line, escalation@harts-ltd.com. Our other events, next week we have our Ladies in Business event on the 28th of June. Again, go to the events page and you'll be able to log on to that. We have our next business club lunch on the 20th of September. We had one yesterday, and we had about 55 people there joining us for lunch. We heard some fabulous speakers. One was a hostage negotiator talking about work that he'd done and how you can apply that to your business, along with a copywriter, and how the menopause affects women in business and what employers should be looking out for. It's a great lunch, great food, Holland Hall Hotel in Macclesfield. If you want to join us, go onto our website and book on the events page. So that's enough from me for now. I'm now going to hand over to Angus Hurst, who's Director of SSO International Forwarding Limited. And I'm just going to make him presenter so he can then share his screen with us. So over to you, Angus.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Can everybody see that screen now okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, thanks for joining, everyone. As Stephen sort of alluded to, this talk is about the Freeports that have been announced in the last sort of couple of years by the government. It's one of the sort of post-Brexit measures for importers and for exporters. That's where the main benefit's going to come in for people importing, people who import and re-export, particularly for manufacturers who import their products that they then manufacture from outside of the UK. So there's been obviously these announcements from HMRC. There hasn't been as much information, sort of clear information for importers and exporters about what it actually means, though. There is still a lot of confusion. There's the case that importers and exporters don't know, haven't heard of it before, they don't know what it means. So this talk will just explain that fairly briefly, in as simple terms as possible. And then afterwards, obviously, if you have any further questions on it, if we want to go into any more detail, then we can do. So SSO were authorised in December as the first custom site within the Liverpool City region Freeports. I think in the UK at the minute, there's around 4 or 5. So again, it's something that traders, forwarders potentially aren't aware of. They don't understand what the benefits are, so that those, it's still a new thing, and there's not many companies in the UK that have been authorised for it. So at the moment, we are still the only custom site in the Liverpool City region Freeport, and again, there are still only around 4 or 5 in the UK. Sorry about that. So as I said, we are the first Freeport custom site in the Liverpool City region. There are currently 8 Freeport zones at the minute around the UK. They're listed here. So there are a few misconceptions about Freeports and how people get the benefit from it. One of the main misconceptions that we see when we're talking to businesses, when we're talking to importers and exporters, is that to get these benefits of the Freeport, you have to import into the Port of Liverpool, into Thames Freeport. You don't. You can import multimodal, so it can be an air, sea, or road transport. It doesn't have to be directly into one of those ports where the Freeports are located. The only caveat is to be able to get the benefit, your business where you operate from, your business where you manufacture those goods or where you store these goods needs to be within one of the Freeport zones. So SSO, as I'll show you in a couple of slides, are based sort of bang in the middle of the Liverpool City region Freeports catchment area. Now we import goods from various ports in the UK. It can be road freight into Dover, it can be air freight into Heathrow, it can be deep sea containers into Felixstowe. We can still apply the Freeport benefits importing or exporting, re-exporting through any of those ports. It's just that when we do use the Freeport, we have to be located within one of the Freeport zones, and the goods have to come straight to us and our Freeport warehouse. So just as a summary of what they do, essentially it's been introduced to both help the sort of customs process flow and the supply chain flow post-Brexit, as well as make savings in terms of taxes, which I'll get onto in a minute. So currently, any goods brought into the UK need their full customs control done on them at the port. All the duties need to be paid, all the taxes need to be paid, and all the VAT as well. Under Freeports, this process is essentially suspended. So there is customs clearance at the port, but it's not a case of all your duties and VAT being paid at that point. Is completely suspended. So if we were to import a container tomorrow into our Freeport, that duty and VAT that would usually be payable if it was from a country such as China and duty was applicable, that would be completely suspended when we were importing into Freeport. As well, sort of goods that require extra additional checks, such as products of animal origin, anything with controlled licenses as well. Because we're bringing that into a Freeport, the customs clearance is done, but those checks can be suspended until they can then be removed from the Freeport, whenever that would be in the future. So as I was saying, to be able to get this benefit, you need to be based within one of the Freeport zones. So the Freeport zones are a lot bigger than most people think. As an example, in terms of the Liverpool City Region Freeport, most people think that it's based in or around the port of Liverpool. It's not. It's a very big area. So it includes the Wirral. As you can see, it stretches all the way out to Port Salford. It includes Lancashire. It goes up to Bolton. It includes Runcorn. And sort of places like that around sort of Greater Liverpool. So we're based sort of in the middle there at SSO Logistics. Anyone in that full area can apply to be a Freeport site, as well as being based in one of the other Freeport locations around the UK. So as I was saying, we're based in there, so we are eligible for the Freeport. And we're eligible as a business to apply to be a custom site operator within the Freeport, but we can bring those goods in anywhere around the UK in any mode of transport. It doesn't need to be in the port of Liverpool. So as I sort of just mentioned then, in terms of the benefits, post-Brexit, obviously anything coming into the UK, anything then leaving the UK needed full customs clearance. The duties needed to be paid if they were applicable, sorry. The VAT needed to be paid on everything coming into the UK up front when that arrived at the port, the road port or the airport or the deep sea port. Under Freeport, essentially what you get is you can suspend that full customs clearance until a later date. So instead of paying all those duties and VATs up front, that's completely suspended. So if you were a company who imported your stock in bulk, maybe if you import stock in bulk over the winter to sell over the summer months, instead of paying all those duties and all those VATs, all that VAT up front when you imported in bulk, that can be suspended until as and when you make a sale in the UK. So if you were to import 10 containers and the next month you only sold 5 pallets, you would only have to pay those duties as and when you sold those 5 pallets in the UK. If you were to re-export them, so if you were to bring in goods into the UK that you then shipped to the Netherlands, that you then shipped to America, wherever it might be, instead of paying those when they left the Freeport zone, because you're now re-exporting goods after importing them into a Freeport, those duties and VATs are not applicable and they are not paid. So again, if you're a company who maybe has a customer who you sell to in the Netherlands, if you're a company who has a sister company in Europe or America or wherever it might be, and you need those goods at your warehouse in the UK, or you need those goods at your site in the UK for whatever reason, currently, essentially, you would have to pay a double duty. So if you were to import something from China tomorrow, keep it here for a month, and then send it to the Netherlands, duty would have to be paid in the UK when that was imported, and then duty would have to be paid when you then imported it into the Netherlands, even though it was only in the UK temporarily, which is essentially paying double duty for a product, so moving it around Europe or sending it to another country. Under Freeport, that goes. So when you import something, you can suspend those duties and taxes until you know what's going to be done with them. If you're re-exporting them, then those taxes are never paid. So the two main benefits there are, if you were to sell them in the UK, you can suspend those duties until as and when you make a sale in the UK. If you were to re-export them, all those duties and all the VAT goes away completely. As well, as I said at the start, for manufacturers, there is an increased incentive on top of this as well. If you were to import goods into a free zone where you were manufacturing them into a new product, then potentially you would be able to apply or be applicable for a rule of a country of origin change. So if you were to import raw product in from China, if you were to then manufacture that into a new product in the Freeport zone, in your Freeport site, then because you've manufactured that after bringing them in duty and VAT suspended, that would then change that product from a Chinese country of origin, an American country of origin, now to a GB country of origin. So again, if you were to then sell that to Europe, if you were to then release it into the UK, instead of being a Chinese origin, it would now be a GB origin. So when you imported it into the Netherlands, as an example, that customer who you send to would have no duties to pay. Some additional benefits on top of those main ones. There are current customs regimes at the minute, like IPR, like bonded warehouses, where you can get similar benefits, but not to this level. Under Freeport, there is no time limit to storing goods. If you were to apply for a bonded warehouse and get an authorization for bonded warehouse or IPR, on that you would have a time limit. With HMRC, you would only be able to bring in goods for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and after that period you would have to pay the duties and you would have to pay the VAT on that, regardless of if they were still in your warehouse, if they were still in storage, if they were still being manufactured, whatever it might be. Under Freeport, there is no limit. You can store goods in the Freeport with no duty or VAT for 1 day, a month, 6 months, 2 years. It doesn't matter. You can still suspend those taxes until you know what to do with them. Everything's covered by one authorization, so there's no need to put down customs comprehensive guarantees where the duty liability that you've estimated is paid to HMRC, essentially as a deposit. There's no need for that. It's a much more simple process. It's a lot more streamlined. It's a lot easier for traders to be able to show to HMRC that they're up to the standards to be able to operate a Freeport. And it just takes away the admin, the authorizations, the necessities that the majority of other customs regimes have. If you were to operate multiple sites in the UK as well, if you were to have multiple Freeport sites, instead of under a bonded warehouse, for example, having to raise customs documents to move from one Freeport site to another Freeport site, under Freeport, there's nothing needed. All you need is to be able to reflect that in your warehouse management system, which most businesses would anyway. So again, it just takes away those customs necessities. It takes away the customs burden a lot more. While customs still is needed, it's needed to a much lesser level, and it's a lot easier for traders to be able to manage a Freeport authorization. Again, because the duty and VAT is suspended, your customs declarations are too. So when you import something under Freeport, there is a customs declaration, but it's a very simplified, what's called a C21 declaration. So nothing on there is listed. You are the importer of record, so you are responsible for the goods, but you don't have to declare the commodity code, you don't have to declare the preferences, the country of origins, all your duties and VATs are suspended. So you can bring something in and not have to process those customs formalities until you know what you're doing with them. So again, if you're re-exporting them, you've avoided those duties and VAT. If you're manufacturing them, there's potential to also avoid those duties and VAT. And if you're just storing them, you can call off as and when you actually make a sale. So again, that's a big cash flow benefit for traders, particularly traders who import in bulk, a year's worth of stock in bulk, and then sell those products part by part around the UK or in Europe. Again, if you're processing goods, as I said, if you're manufacturing those products, there is potential as well for those country of origin changes. So a big problem that we see from exporters at the minute is when they're selling goods to Europe, because we're no longer in that customs union. It might get to the Netherlands, it might get to Germany, wherever you're selling to, and there are duties applicable because that product originally came in from China and it's a Chinese country of origin. If you were to utilise the Freeport, if you were to be a custom site, when you're bringing that in and you're manufacturing the goods, when you're processing the goods, whatever it might be, if there's enough change to that product, then that is no longer a Chinese country of origin. It's a GB country of origin. It's whatever it might be. So it's whatever it might be. So that would then change to a GB country of origin. So if you sell to the Netherlands, because of the trade agreement that we've got, there will be no duty payable, where at the minute there is. So again, as I was just mentioning there, post-Brexit there were a lot of issues. So full customs control for any goods coming in from the EU, that wasn't there before Brexit. Again, selling to Europe, if your products originally came in from China, that would have duty applicable, where before Brexit it didn't. That is all has the potential to go away under Freeport. So if you're importing something from the EU and you're importing it under Freeport, that full customs control is completely suspended until you know what you want to do with that product in the UK. Again, if you're a manufacturer who brings in products from China, manufactures it in a Freeport zone and then sell to Europe, you have the potential to change that country of origin because of the process that you've done in the Freeport. So again, whereas at the minute, if you're bringing in goods from China, whatever you're doing with it, if you then send it to the UK, it's still a Chinese country of origin and duty is applicable. If you manufacture that, then you have the potential to change that country of origin. From 2024 as well, there are changes. I don't know if this is applicable to any importers on this call, but from 2024, the physical checks for products of animal origin, food, drink, any SPS products, that has been suspended. So since we left the European Union, the UK government decided to postpone the full checks that are required on those type of products until October. But it's not being postponed anymore. It is coming in October. So anybody importing that type of product, any products with these type of controls on, from October, everyone will need a full customs inspection by the port on top of the customs declaration that there currently is. So again, at the minute that isn't in place, and it will cause problems at the port. It will cause problems for importers on top of anything that they currently have. So again, the Freeport is a way to just ease that supply chain problem that will be coming in from October. So as I was saying, those are the solutions for Freeports. Your customers who import in bulk for the cash flow can get the benefit. Customers who re-export products, again, making a massive saving. And customers who manufacture, depending on the change that they do on their Freeport site, there's potential there for a large saving in their taxes and in their duty that's paid when they import products into the UK. In terms of the application process, as I said, it is a lot more streamlined and it is a lot more simple than people think. So you do have to come up to all the required HMRC standards, but what HMRC have done with the Freeport is made it a lot easier to show that to HMRC. So under something like a bonded warehouse application, an IPR application, you have to put customs guarantees in place. You have to show extreme detail through all of your audit systems and through all of your audit trails. Under Freeport, that is sort of relaxed a lot more for the applicant. So while you do have to prove that you're up to authorised economic operator, so AEO standards, the proof of that is a lot more simple. So once your application is done, it's around a sort of 30 pages of questions that you just need to answer and send to HMRC. You can then send up as much backup as you have, and as many documents as you have to HMRC, and then they'll organise a visit just to come out and speak to you, to talk through the application with you, to sort of just go through things, have a look around your site, and it's a lot more informal than the other applications that you have with HMRC currently. So we were authorised in December. We are at the moment in discussions at the later stages of applications for around 4 businesses now in the Liverpool City Region Freeports who are also looking to become a custom site operator. So again, we've had a lot of exposure to the application process and a lot of exposure to dealing with HMRC, and it is a lot more informal than a lot of other HMRC applications. Once that application is written and submitted, HMRC are very helpful with what documents you need to provide on the day of the site visit, which is sort of around 3 hours. They're very helpful there, and they do want you to be able to have these applications and work with you to get them. So just to summarise then, as I said, the Freeport is a huge opportunity for UK importers and exporters, in my opinion, to do a few things. Number one, simplify those processes that since Brexit have, been very difficult for traders and still are difficult for traders, all these years later. It's a increased way of being able to reduce your cost on manufacturing, to reduce your cost on importing and exporting through duty and VAT suspension, where you will potentially never have to pay certain duties and certain VAT if you're re-exporting, if you're manufacturing. And again, it's a way of increasing your trade as a business with European countries, with other countries around the world through these duty suspensions, through these manufacturing benefits if you're manufacturing in a Freeport zone. So thank you very much. Obviously, it's been a little bit shorter than we initially planned, so we've left some room at the end for any questions that you have. Obviously, it's quite a big topic, and there's a lot of different points to it, so we've sort of just summarised as much as we can about the general benefits for importers and exporters. We can go into more detail if anyone has any questions about their business specifically. We don't have to say what your business is, who you are, but just in terms of what you do. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we do and how the Freeport might benefit. So if anyone has any questions, please ask away.
Yep, feel free to do so. Unmute yourself or stick your camera on and feel free to ask any questions you want about Freeports. Certainly a very interesting topic, and I know I've learned a load of stuff this morning. Just while people are thinking maybe 1 or 2 questions, is it getting any easier after Brexit to import and export, or is it still as bad as it used to, as everyone's making out?
I mean the requirements and the regulations haven't changed. I think it's a case that importers now are a lot more used to the new process. There's nothing that can be done about it. Those processes have to be there. They are the same as when we left the European Union. So it's a case of importers and exporters just having to get used to that process, understanding the customs process a lot more. I think the main thing that traders can do is look at having an appointed customs broker, essentially as an insurance policy, because with the best will in the world, importers and exporters are too busy to worry about customs regulations, customs compliance, the operations of clearing customs in and out of the UK. A customs broker essentially acts as an insurance policy. They will create your customs documents, they'll manage the customs clearances with the carriers, with the hauliers, and it's just a big insurance policy to take a burden away from the supply chain, which is already complicated enough.
Is that something you do as well?
We do, yeah. So we are a customs broker. So I didn't really mention it on the call, but SSO, we're 2 businesses. So SSO Logistics are UK transport and warehousing, been going since about 2012. SSO International are the newer branch of the SSO group, where we offer multimodal freight forwarding and customs management. So as I said, we're the only Freeport customs site in the Northwest, only the 4th in the UK. So we manage customs on behalf of traders who are importing and exporting in any sort of volume, really, whether it's a smaller sort of 1 a month import or whether it's hundreds a month.
Okay. And anybody else got any questions? Again, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to. From a cost point of view, presumably there is a massive overall cost saving using yourself as a Freeport rather than doing it any other way.
Yeah, so in terms of the Freeport, our our operation, our custom site is a warehousing facility, so we don't import goods ourselves. We import goods for customers and we store them. So if we were to import and store in our warehouse, which we are doing on a regular basis now, product that the customer wanted this duty and VAT suspension on, we can just apply that using our authorization. So if you imported a container tomorrow, wanted to store it at a warehouse, we could import that under Freeport, so there's no duties and VATs. Now, what we also do is offer consultancy to basically walk you through the process that I've described. So from beginning to end, walking through the process of seeing if you're eligible for Freeport, if you meet the requirements, to then assisting you with the application, to assisting you with gathering the documents, and then to assist you on the site visit day itself, and help you through when HMRC are there asking questions. We're there to assist you on that. So that's something that we're now doing. As I said on the call, we sort of got 4 or so businesses who are at the later stages of the application.
Got a question come through in the chat box. Feel free to put your question in there if you want. So how do we get our importers to use your Freeport? We pay CCT on invoice for each consignment.
So how do we get importers to use your Freeport? So just Carol, on that question, are you the importer of records for these shipments that you import, or is a different company importing that, and then are you buying off that UK business? Sorry, I'm just while you reply, Carol, I'll see. Use the information. Right, that's fine. So essentially, we would recommend, if you're responsible for the import, then looking at us for the freight forwarding, because it's a lot easier, we found, when the supply chain is in one hand. If you did want to carry on using the business that you're using at the minute, that's fine. It's just a case that when that arrives into the port, we have to customs clear that into our Freeport, because we need to manage that Freeport management, and then you instruct your forwarder to deliver that straight to our Freeport warehouse. So if you were to import a container tomorrow that you wanted to use the Freeport on, you could organise the freight to the port, we would customs clear it, and then either the forwarder who you're already dealing with or SSO would pick that container up from the port, deliver it straight into our Freeport. Those duties and VATs aren't paid at all. Then what you want to do with it from there is up to you. If you were to re-export it, we can look at doing the re-export. If you were to only want 1 pallet of that container delivering to your place tomorrow, we could deliver that, and you'd only pay the duty on that 1 pallet. So instead of it being picked up and delivered to your site, it's picked up and delivered to our Freeport warehouse.
She's come back and said we don't import an entire container, but presumably it can be as small as it can be as small or as large as it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's an LCL, if it's 1 pallet, if it's 10 pallets, whatever it is, or if it's 1 box, whatever it might be, that's absolutely fine. The amount that you're bringing in doesn't affect how you use the Freeport. So it's a case of, if you just imported 1 pallet, for example, we could store that 1 pallet at our location without paying those duties and taxes.
Great. Thank you very much. And anybody else got any questions they want to ask? Feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, it's Dave Johnson of Clark Energy. I've had to dial in so we can get on the actual web call. It might have been answered already. But my question just is, if we were to go down the route of Freeports, I've been discussing it with Angus over the last few days anyway, and it might have already been answered, would we necessarily have to use SSO as our customs broker, or because we're looking at something maybe where we can take it in-house, or can we continue with our current customs broker to do it?
To be honest, we'd recommend, once you go for it, there's no obligation to do whatever it is, but what we'd recommend is, this is a brand new regime. It sounds like you're saying that I'm selling this to you have to use us, but there's no other customs brokers or freight forwarders who understand the Freeport, they just don't, so there will be big issues. So when we we do this as consultancy and then Freeport management because we manage it properly, because you are audited on those Freeports authorizations. So in 1 year's time you will get audited, or in 3 years' time you will get audited. So it's really not a good idea, in our opinion, to stick with that current broker, because it needs to be managed properly. So we're managing our Freeport warehouse now, and with in the next couple of months we'll be managing around 3 or 4, hopefully. It's a big thing, and no one else in the UK is really managing a Freeport warehouse like we are. So it's really not recommended because the knowledge isn't there with other brokers at the minute.
Okay.
We've got a few more questions coming in now. So Ben Davis, thanks for that. My question would be, once the Freeport scheme is up and running with the increase of trade, would that also increase the demand for companies, facilities, warehousing structures within zones?
Once Freeport seems up and running. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've been working with the Liverpool City Region Freeport team. So after this benefit, it might be good to get in touch with them. They have built tax sites in the Liverpool City Region Freeport where warehouses are being built, and there's a lot of incentives with regards to national insurance payments that are reduced for employees who work there. There's a lot of building of warehouses around and in the Freeport zone. So it will increase demand, definitely. Because SSO, as an example, we can offer something that nobody else really in the UK can in terms of the Freeport. There's only 4, as I said, 4 or 5 other companies around the UK who have this authorization, and a lot of them, the majority of them actually don't do what we do in terms of freight forwarding, warehousing, customs management. So as it picks up, there will be a big demand, definitely.
Okay. James says he's going to follow up with you privately. That's great. And what would be the best? Ben's followed up with what would be the best way to reach out to those companies.
Which companies are that? Sorry, Ben. Which companies are you wanting to reach out to, just so I understand?
Yeah. Come back to us, Ben. While we're waiting for that, Kevin has come back. I'm a current importer. Do you have ISO and/or BRC certifications? Do you empty containers? How do you identify which items are to be released from sale from the container? Shipping lines want their containers back. Must goods be palletised in containers, and does Freeport affect postponed VAT arrangements? There's about half a dozen questions in there for you, so you work your way through
Kevin,
them.
Kevin, so our warehouse is ISO and BRC, so we are BRC authorised. When goods arrive at our Freeport zone, we can sort of do anything with them. If they're already palletised, then we'll obviously do the container divan. If they're not palletised, then we can palletise them for you. Obviously, there's an extra cost to that, but we can palletise them for you and store them. We'll then return the container back to the port or wherever it needs to be returned to. So those containers are returns. We'll either divan it if it's already palletised, or we'll palletise the goods for you when they're stored at our warehouse. When you then import that into Freeport, we'll book that into our system, and we'll customs clear that into Freeport and book everything into our customs system. That will then match up with our WMS system. So we can essentially run a report on our customs system and our warehouse management system that will both match up exactly with each other. So if the next week then you wanted to call off one product from that, our warehouse management system sends a request to our customs system, and we declare that out of the Freeport. So basically we have 2 systems that match up with each other, our WMS system and our customs system, and from there we can then call off the goods as and when you need them.
In terms of the VAT,
so in terms of postponed VAT, when you import it, there's no VAT, there's no duty. If you were to call off one pallet from the Freeport into the UK of what you imported, then the postponed VAT is then applied. So instead of paying all your VAT up front and all your duty up front, it's postponed to as and when you need it.
Right.
Ben, any company is looking to expand or build within the zones. So I'd recommend, just at the minute, if you're looking on potentially relocating to a Freeport, get in touch with the Liverpool City Region Freeport team. at the minute, I can't advise, how many other businesses like SSO in terms of a freight forwarder or warehouse keeper are looking to get authorised for a Freeport zone. At the minute, there aren't any, apart from us. So I can't answer the question on how to get in touch with them, because, as I said, we are the only one. So if you do have any questions about freight forwarding, get in touch and we can see what we can do for you.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Carol says, why isn't everywhere a Freeport? Good question.
Yeah. So I think HMRC introduced these to essentially, it was part of the leveling up. A lot of it was part of the leveling up agenda. So they wanted to put them in locations where they wanted to increase funding, and they wanted to centre them around the main sort of logistics hubs in the UK. So Liverpool as one of the main ports. It does 50% of containers from America. Felixstowe is the main in the UK. So they've sort of centred them around the main logistics hubs in the UK to sort of build hubs and manufacturing hubs, logistics hubs in those areas. So unfortunately, the whole of the UK isn't eligible for Freeport. We need to be based within one of those locations.
Okay. Woodley Engineering. We are a manufacturer in Greater Manchester. We buy raw materials in the UK and export to Europe. Is there any benefit for us?
Yeah. So Woodley, if you want to maybe pop me an email after this, I'll share my email at the end. But if you want to pop an email after this, I can get some more details from you. But as I was saying on the call, if you're importing something duty and VAT paid in the UK, manufacturing it, sending it to Europe under Freeport, potentially, if you're re-exporting 100% of your product, you would never pay any duty and VAT on the goods that you import. So if you're importing it all into the UK, manufacturing it, exporting 100% of it to Europe, you would never pay any duty or VAT. Potentially when it got over there as well, if you've made enough change, it would be a GB origin instead of, say, a Chinese origin, for example. So it'd be good if I could maybe have a catch up with you after this and just get some more details.
And do you want to put your details in the message box and chat box at the moment? Ben has said he'll catch up with you afterwards. Carol says thank you very much indeed. There's Angus' details in the chat box, Angus at ssoif.co.uk. Feel free to drop him an email and I'm sure he'll be able to help. I think that brings us to the end of our time that we've got with Angus. So I just want to wish him a very big thank you, because it's a topic which certainly has piqued a lot of interest, certainly amongst the members who've joined us on today's webinar, and also for myself as well, because it's given us a few ideas to take back to our clients as well. So if you need any help with anything to do with exporting, importing, Freeports, customs duty and VAT, you now know where to go. Go to the SSO group and speak to Angus. And if you want any help with dealing with the accounting side of it, then you know where we are. So thanks very much indeed. We will see you after the summer, unless you're attending one of our in-person events, the Ladies in Business event next week. Thankfully, I won't be there. But feel free, if you want to join us on any future events, that'd be great. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks.